Today on the podcast, my conversation with Meg Handley from the Fatherhood and the Rest of Us. We discuss parenting, being a dad, and can you be an influencer in your own home? Find out next on the podcast. Let's do this.
Welcome to the No Sitting on the Sideline Dad podcast, a podcast about a journey of discovery and conversations about not sitting on the sideline of life. Let's get involved. Here's host Joe Foley.
Hey, welcome to the podcast. My name is Joe Foley, and I'm a dad, a parent, and a crazy busy Joe just like you. And I want to say thank you for being here. And this is your first time, welcome. I know as a dad and a parent, our time's limited, so it means a lot that you're here. This is a podcast about journey discovery. What I mean by is me and you learn together. Yes, me and you learn together from my interviews and stuff that I talk about. It's interesting because I'm learning just like you, so I'm not an expert, but I find out these things that makes me a better dad, better person, better human being sometimes, because I'll give you an example. Me being a dad. I didn't have a dad growing up. Well, I had a stepfather, but it wasn't really the greatest example for being a father. And I think sometimes as a dad, it's like I'm learning as I go. And especially all the stuff I've gone through last few years with divorce and stuff like that, I'm learning just like you. It's like our guest today. Next up, my conversation with Meg Handley from the Fatherhood and the Rest of Us. Brandon's the host of the Father of the Rest of Us podcast, also a coach and a speaker. He's a father of 2 boys and married with his wife, Meg Handley. Listen to talking with Brandon, you can feel the passion for being a father and wanting to help others. In the interview, we'll talk about the ins and outs of being a father, what it's like growing up with other father, something that I can relate to, creating community like like-minded fathers, and also trying to figure out the father you want to be. I got the chance to meet Brandon at Podcast Movement 2018. And I got to say, talking to him on the podcast and meeting in person, he has a positive influence to be around. I catch myself, to be honest with you, and he's probably going to listen to this podcast, but I caught myself not wanting to be negative and just being positive and have a conversation. He's an inspiration to all fathers and parents. So let's jump right into the interview. Welcome to the podcast, Brandon.
Hey, Joe, thanks for having me today. It's exciting to be here.
Thank you. I have a quick question. I like to try intro questions sometimes and try to get, know you a little bit. What's the last thing you've done with your kids fun thing you did with your kids?
Last fun thing, I did with the kids, outside of, before we were starting this up today, we're talking about how there's a little bit of snow here down in North Carolina. So one of the fun things that we did was just throw some snow at each other. And they don't get the opportunity quite like you do, up where you're at to be surrounded by the snow so much. And, I think the other fun thing that we did recently was I bought them both a couple of, bows. I've got 2 boys, 5 and 8. I bought them some bow and arrows, nothing like, I think 15 pound or something like that. And we just stood out back, in the backyard and shot some bows and arrows.
One thing that we were talking about, your website is Father for the Rest of Us. That's an interesting name. What does fatherhood mean to you?
Fatherhood to me, it means it's always changing because, it means constant growth as a man right now, constant ability to, express myself as a leader in the family, to my community and to those around me. And, being a dad, it's kind of weird to say. It's almost like a dream come true. It's like, being able to be the man I was always supposed to be or, designed to be, because I get to really embody, the ideal person. And I do that because that's what I'm trying to teach my boys. And I understand that the only opportunity, the best opportunity that I can get my boys to be the men that I want them to be is to be, that model.
It's interesting. Having any one of those dad moments going, oh crap, I can't believe I did that kind of dad moment?
Oh man, yeah, all the time. You get them all the time. I mean, I can tell you it was probably just the other day and you do like the dad growl. You're like, oh, you gotta stop that. What are you doing? And then you're like, sorry, dude. I didn't mean to flip my lid like that. I just, I shouldn't have reacted like that. What was that? It was last week. The kids were just kind of hanging out. I was taking out some recycling. I asked one of my kids, I asked him to please go grab the door for me while I took some stuff out. 8 years old, and he gave me like some mope face, and he's like, I don't wanna. And then he finally like, he stood up and he started walking there. He's like walking really slow and just like, like intentionally slow and just kind of being a jerk. Right? And I was like, move it! My wife jumped up, Meg jumped up in her seat and gives me the look. I'm like, sorry. Didn't mean to lose it. I just want to get the trash out and get the day going. So yeah, man, all the time, stuff like that.
But what's funny is just for the young kids when learning, it's like my son now is starting to give me attitude.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, he goes, sorry, Daddy, attitude. I'm like, I want milk. I go, how do you ask? Please. Or he's like, I'm almost like, sometimes I think I'm his butler.
Sure. Yeah.
Daddy, snack. Just had dinner.
Well, look, and you can go from that to where they are now and getting everything for themselves. And it's almost sad. And I still think back to when, even my oldest, I think back to when he couldn't even move. Mm-hmm. Right? Couldn't even move. When you put him down, lay him down, he's all swaddled up, wrapped up in a blanket like a little caterpillar. And he would leave and come back and he would still be there. Right?
Yeah.
You go do things. And then I still get sad that that's changed because now he can, after he started walking on his own, you couldn't just leave him by himself anymore. And now they get stuff for themselves. They make their own sandwiches. I'll come downstairs sometimes, like we'll leave them alone, to do whatever it is that they're doing, just kind of hanging out in the house and come back down. There's bread on the counter. There's peanut butter over here. There's the peanut butter, sticking over here. The younger one who's not as adept with all those things just yet. It's just like leaving, wrappers, cheese stick wrappers over here, half-eaten apple over here. And it just it almost makes me feel sad because they're starting to be able to do things on their own. And I'm like, wow, I could have helped you with that. I could have gotten all that without making this mess for you guys.
He'll come downstairs going, what's up? And he started laughing because he think it just, because like you said, it just think it's funny.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All the time. They constantly make me laugh. There's one question that I tend to ask on the end of my podcast and they'll say, what is one thing that you would like to thank your children for? Maybe 10 years goes by and you say, here, I'd like to thank my kids for the laughs that they give me, the huge amounts of entertainment that I get. I love it. Like when you want to be super mad at them, but you can't because whatever they've done is just so funny. You're just sitting there going, stop it. But it's really hard to do when you're just laughing. They can't take you seriously because you can't even take yourself seriously in the situation.
One thing about fatherhood, I always wondered too, and I know I have my fears, but I was wondering, what is one of your fears of being a dad?
One of my fears of being a dad?
Fears like, I don't want to mess it up or stuff like that.
No, you know what? I can't mess it up. Honestly, and I say that because, I didn't have a father in my life and, not having one and being one means that I can't mess it up. There's no way for me to mess it up, because just by showing up and being here and putting in the time and the effort that I already have for all intents and purposes for me would be, I feel like I could roll out right now and be like, all right, done. I've done a lot more than what was given to me, from a fatherhood perspective, that I know these boys are already in a much better situation than I was in regards to, having, the support from a male perspective, having a male around that having a father around is just so, even having a bad father around you is better than none. So I can't mess it up as long as I'm here.
Well, it's funny thing I can relate to. I remember listening to not 15 to our podcast before, and I can relate to that because I didn't have my dad around either. My mom and dad separated when I was like 2.
Okay.
And I didn't see my dad because behind the scenes stuff. When you're a kid, you don't see the adult squabbling behind through divorce. And my dad, I didn't see him. So basically, I didn't really reconnect with my dad for gosh, a couple years until going through divorce. And my stepfather was abusive and a drug addict. So I can relate to a lot of your.
And we have that in common too. So that was why, that was the impetus for the divorce for my mom and my dad. So he was an abusive man. And, in a long streak of, look, it's hard to break that cycle. And he was an abusive man. And what had happened was, and they lived in San Francisco in the 70s, dude. Okay. That's enough said. And so they were both kind of into drugs. I think that as it came along, I had an older sister, and I think that as I came along, it was like my mom was like, all right, look, we gotta pull it together. He was abusive and started to go, I think, I was a baby at the time, but he started to direct it towards the children. She put him in jail. It was that bad. And I think even back, you go back, that's 40 years, right? It must have been pretty heinous because it was almost still acceptable back then, right? Because we still made progress and there's still a bunch of men that it's okay to be abusive, even now. So it must have been that much worse, 40 years ago. And, the drugs, he died of an overdose. I met him. I had the opportunity to meet him once in person when I was 19, driving across country, completely incidental. And he died 3 months after we met.
It's almost funny. I don't know about you as a dad. I know as myself is when I became a dad, not having the close connection with my dad or example and having my stepfather situation, I didn't really have a playbook to go by. I had to almost feel like I'm making it up on my own. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, there was, and maybe there still is a lot of that feeling like, am I teaching them to be manly enough? Am I going about it the right way? There was some of that. A lot of that has gone by the wayside now, and a lot of that has gone by the wayside also due to, the efforts that, over the past year creating this podcast and the community that I've created. Excuse me. One part of the podcast is the interviews like you and I are having right now. And that's my opportunity to learn more from other fathers who are in the thick of it right now. And, not to use them as a gauge, but to, to understand that I'm right in line with what I'm doing. And so after having, probably 40 conversations with other men directly one-on-one about fatherhood, how they're doing it versus not even versus how I'm doing it. It's just a difference. I understand that, again, I can't fail right now. I'm doing great. Everything's coming along just the way that it should. And it's not to put myself up there. It's just like, hey man, I understand that that's cool. I'm doing all right. So there's less of that now than there may have been initially. And, I forgot the second part of the question.
No, it's just about like handbook. Everybody has it's like I remember when my son was born, everybody tells me you can do this, and this. And when you're in the thick of things, throw the handbook out.
Yeah, you got to do what you think is right. And, like I said earlier, fatherhood is awesome because you are always learning. You are always growing. I just got done reading, a series and doing a Coursera course called, the ABCs of Parenting, and, reading the two books by Dr. Kasdan, who is, Yale, one of his books is around here, but like he's a Yale professor, leads the child studies up in Yale, been doing it 30 years. And reading his books in the past month and a half, I've completely revamped my whole outlook on fatherhood and take on it. So you've got to be willing to put that work in, and or just be willing to accept where you are. And if you're happy where you are, that's cool. That's 100% cool. And if you want to change, if you want to see growth, things aren't the way that you want to be at your house, you got to start with you. And I think that's lame truth. I mean, you got to do the work on you, and before you can really expect anything or take it to others. You got to put the work in on yourself if you want to, I think, improve in fatherhood.
Well, one thing it's a funny thing, and I noticed since my son too, and I didn't realize this, but the example you set in by doing what you do and being a podcaster, and also you're a podcaster yourself and stuff like that, and I have my setup in my bedroom, like my desk. I'm talking now, and all of a sudden I see my son going over and taking my microphone and doing a podcast. Have you seen your son, like anything that you do personally, like set an example, like, set tables, doing podcasts or whatever you do? Have you seen it like that, like mimicking you?
Absolutely. I've got a big old green screen in here as well, where I'll do some videos and they'll come up and they'll do videos. So they do videos. So, you said, before I do a lot of Facebook lives and they'll come up here and they'll be like, hey, I want to shoot a video. And Finn, my oldest one, is the one that does it the most, and he'll take a Pokemon card and sit there and poke, like, here is XYZ Pokemon, and here's all of his abilities, here's what he can do, and here's so it's really cool. And I think that they think I do this more for my real job than anything else. And I actually love that. When my youngest asked me, he goes, hey Dad, when we're at school, do you do fatherhood for the rest of us? I'm like, yeah, but sometimes I do, so they see fatherhood for the rest of us as being more of who I am and what I do versus my job. And that is fine with me. That is fantastic with me, because I really want them to see me doing something I love and something that has purpose and intent versus, grinding out my daily job. And I love my job. I love the work that I do, but it's not as purpose driven, and it's not as fulfilling as what I do here and now. And I want them to see me going for a dream, living my dream.
Is it showing being a happy dad instead of a depressed, sad dad? Yeah,
well, another conversation that I often have is I think you're around the same age as I am, and we get to be towards midlife, and we have an opportunity. You see a lot of guys that cling in to their past and everything that they were, and kind of hanging on to all the things that were. Like, I used to be cool because of all these things I used to get to do. I used to be cool because of XYZ versus, and then kind of sitting there on the couch, right? And saying, man, what happened to my life and all this other stuff. And be like, how did I end up here? This is crappy. Or being like, hey, I've gotten to this point in my life, and that's pretty cool. How much I have like this much more of life coming at me. I'm embracing that. I'm chasing it down. I'm going to grab. I talked to the guy the other day, Charlie King. I'm going to suck the marrow out of what's left here, man. I'm going to go get it. My thing is, I got to where I am today real haphazardly, really non-intentionally. And it's been great. I've been blessed. I've been lucky. Have I put the work in? Sure. But was it like I want to reach a certain destination? No, I've never really been that kind of guy. I was a fly by the seat of the pants. And so a couple years back was when I said, what happens if I don't know, take a stake in my life? What happens if I actually try? And that's what's got me to through the past couple of years is been an amazing past couple of years of growth. And if you're a fan of Darren Hardy, if you've read The Compound Effect, or if you're familiar with just the compound effect in of itself, just a small amount added every day towards who you want to be, or your intention, who you intend to be, really adds up. Really adds up. If you again, who's it? Zig Ziglar, right? Like, I mean, you only got to change like 0.01% of yourself every day over 365 days. Maybe it's 0.035. I don't know what the exact number is, but it's not even 8% of yourself that you need to change or make address every day in order to change 100% in a year.
Well, it's interesting being a father too, and another thing I was when I was looking like for the interview, I was checking up, is you also wrote a book, Father for the Rest of Us. Is that where the whole thing started?
No, I mean, I did Fatherhood for the Rest of Us is, look, man, you're in the same space as I am. You gotta have a magnet, a lead magnet, and you gotta have an ebook. You've got to do this and that, for your marketing. And so I wrote the book as a lead magnet, but it was a really cool exercise because, I sat down and wrote out like this story. And I wrote down the origin story. Hey, like I was talking earlier, here's kind of the genesis of it. Like, my dad was abusive. My mom was a hippie. We left, and I grew up without a dad, and he was a drug addict, and all that stuff. So I kind of told my story leading up to where I am now, and being a father, and just why it means so much to me, and what this kind of movement means. I mean, geez, I wrote that book like 7 months ago, and I can tell you right now, like my whole world changed since then.
I saw the on your webpage. I noticed that, and that was really interesting. And I thought it maybe it had something to do with the podcast, but just questions I had to ask.
Now the podcast kind of came about with like I had a sales coach. I hired a sales coach. She and two other guys were podcasters. They were just podcasters. started listening to their podcast, which got me ratcheted into podcasts. You follow the trail. I ended up, listening to another podcaster, Chasing Your Dreams, Motivations, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, you know what? I'd love to do a podcast. I ended up buying one of, this guy's, Sam Crowley, Everyday Saturday. I bought his video series, watched his video series. I was like, this guy's doing it like that. There's no way I can't put something together as well. And so I was sold hook, line, and sinker. I bought podcast coaching. And, when it comes down to podcasting, as you know, I'm not sure exactly how you ended up getting yours, but you've got to go through, you kind of be like, right, go through 500 things that you love to do, narrow it down. What's your niche, right? What's your niche? You're like, oh my God, I don't even know if I'm going to like Brussels sprouts in another 6 months. And so you gotta go through. And for me, it was like, what's going to keep my interest for longer than 6 months is basically what it boiled down to. And it was me loving my children, loving being a father, going through that journey. That was, kind of that was the thing I could really sink into. That was something that I could really, really buy that I was going to be doing for the rest of my life. I didn't see that going away. And I'm glad that I did. It's probably the biggest and, best step that I've taken. The impact that it has had on the home has also, the changes in me, like we were talking earlier, has really rippled through the household and, in the community. And, I just see that continuing. I see that ripple continuing to go out, past it all.
What kind of like community? How big is the community you have?
For the podcast listeners, I mean, that ebbs and flows. I think I average around 100, downloads right now. But I also do a daily Facebook Live. So it's always just kind of where the attention's put. I love doing the interviews, and that's just huge to me. So that's big. I was doing a daily like solo thing inside of the podcast and doing it inside of Facebook. And I just kind of felt like I was getting too stretched. I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I got to so I do the Facebook Lives daily to a group of about 300 men in there in the Fatherhood for the Rest of Us community. A really nice engagement in there with those men where we're just there to support each other, right? Good, bad, or whatever, indifferent. We just kind of, one of the things I always say is we all have our challenges, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's in man's nature. Like if you see a challenge, yourself and you know how to fix it, or you've got an idea of how to fix it, how long does it take before you break through a wall? You're like, I can help you. I can do this. Let me out it. And I think that's just innate man. And that's where like we often, come into difficulties with our spouse, right? Like our spouse will be like, hey, I've got this problem. And you're like, oh yeah. Let's fix that. And they're like, well, no, I just want to talk. Like that doesn't even I can't even wrap my head around that, right? If you got a problem, let's fix it.
It's like our nature to fix things. We just want,
right.
Fix it. I mean, another thing too, I guess, a lot of things men, especially with men's group, when people get talked to and stuff like that, he says sometimes when men have problems, we don't look for help. We have a hard time looking for help.
Yeah. And that is simply to me like a Western, that's a United States of America thing, right? We're all a bunch of freaking cowboys. We're all a bunch of heroes. We can take on the world. We can do it all of ourselves, but that's a bunch of BS. And if you continue to live, in that, I mean, you've got the weight of your shoulder, you weigh the world on your shoulders and then some, right? So reaching out for help, is actually, probably one of the strongest things you can do. Being like, man, I'm having this situation. I found that if I'm going through something, even as trivial as it could be, I think, one of the posts that I put in my group was that, I was just dealing with putting my kids to bed, right? And them still sleeping in our bed and whatever, but posting that and writing it out, just kind of releases it, right? You're like, oh man, I thought I got that off my chest into a group where they're not going to judge me. Cause it's not like we're all dads. We're all going through different things and we all have that cornerstone of this. And being able to share that immediately kind of just releases like this bubbled up pressure that you may have taken out inside your house, right? But instead you're just doing it with a group of men who say, yeah, man, I went through that and here's what I did to fix it. And you're like, yeah. Or like, you release it. And once you release it, you don't even care anymore. Like, I don't even care anymore. Thanks for being there, guys. Thanks for listening. And that's, I get it. and you can either take the advice or not. And you can try some of the things that they do. What I find more often than not though is just the sharing of dad ideas. And if you find one or two of the guys or three, you respect the guys in the community, right? And if they try something, like, that's a great idea, I'm going to try that out. It's as simple as look, we are all, we're influencers within our own house and whatever we see or we surround ourselves by, we're influenced by. So, if I'm surrounded by, 300 plus men, that are just trying to kick ass at fatherhood, who are just trying to do their best at fatherhood, and, I respect from their vantage points or their viewpoints, and they mention something kind of cool, I'm going to check it out.
Well, I think when you were just saying that, when we were talking about before in the beginning, you asked me about Dad 2.0 and how's that, like, your podcast, as you reach that community, like, I don't know how to explain it, but the community, Dad 2.0, your podcast, being a dad, is that in any way correlated together, or can you?
Yeah, man. Like, I mean, look, even a year ago, if you've been like, hey, Brandon, next year at this time, same time of year, if you're going to go to a dad convention, I was like, I would have laughed you out, man. I would, because I started the podcast in February of last year. I would have laughed you out. And now it's like, I'm so excited to go be in, this community that's so big and growing. And I just think that it's amazing how our culture's kind of taken a shift and allowing fathers to really play a larger part of the parenthood role versus just this supporter and provider role, which is how I think you probably agree. You probably approached it as, got the kid, gonna have to go to work, gonna have to provide food, shelter, and keep the bears out. Right? And we play a much greater role than that, and we are seeing more men embracing it and being allowed to embrace it. And I think that is a huge part. And that's a big part. It's we are being allowed to be fathers. And I don't think that we have been able to share the mom spotlight. Moms get pissed at dads because we don't have to do anything, quote unquote. Like, hey, you just get to show up and you're your dad.
So we see that. You always see that now, like the old commercials. Like, now I get aggravated because I'm not a dad. I get mad. The stupid dad. The guy just like the fumbling.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not a fumbling idiot.
Well, I think, and agreed, but I think that the reason that that's almost permissible is because, you gotta have a sense of humor, right? Gotta have a sense of humor. And, we can put ourselves in that light and look back and take a laugh at ourselves and not take it all so seriously. And I think that's why they can almost get it. But yeah, dude, I'm with you. We are not bumbling idiots. We're not jackasses. Sorry for, I'm not sure if you have to edit that, but we are as integral. We are as important, and we play just as much of a role as the mother.
Exactly. Another thing too, mentioned coaching. At coaching, you coach other men.
Yeah, so that is the coaching for me. When I took my coaching, I took it for sales, but how I applied it was to life, and all the stuff that you take in business coaching and what you can apply that to fatherhood. And a big part for me is that again, I wasn't a goal setter. I wasn't an intentional guy. I wasn't let's set up all these routines type of person. Affirmations, meditation, mindfulness, all this stuff was not part of my daily routine. These are all things that you can point and direct towards business to excel in business. But I decided to use all of those tools and focus them on fatherhood. Life changing, brother. Life changing. And so I offer the same type of coaching that applies to business and all these other aspects of life, but apply it towards fatherhood. And I enjoy that much more than because, and again, this is just, my platform is that when I stop focusing as much on, work and chasing the dollar, chasing raises and chasing all these other things, and instead applied it to my family and my life, made a radical difference. And I just want other men to be able to do that and apply it in that same manner. And especially for the starter, like if you've, I saw you nodding your head a lot when I said Zig Ziglar, right? So one of the things that he talks about is like, what is it? They do studies in Harvard, where I don't know where they do the studies, but only 3% of people write down their goals. And only, when they go back and they find out, of all the people who were successful, it was pretty much the 3% that write down the goals and start chasing it down and start applying it, start doing that. So, my target market is and I say target market, and I hate saying that, but the people whose lives I want to change are the people who've never done that, who've never taken those steps, who have never, started to apply those things in their lives, writing down goals, having a coach. And having it, affirmations. I know it's like annoying, and most of us are like, I just got done reading our audiobook in Subtle Art of Not Giving a Bleep, right? And I don't know if you've done that. And he goes through there and he talks about, affirmations as lying to yourself. And I'm like, dude, no, you're wrong. It's when you vocalize, when you rewrite down your intent on who you want to be, that's all you're doing is you're setting your daily intentions up. Like, this is who I know I'm not today.
Yeah.
Or this is who I'm becoming. Right. And so, taking those, change behaviors and sharing that with men through coaching, and especially again, it's just easy for me to do it through fatherhood because that's where I've applied it the most. And that's where my heart's like blown up, because of it. So everything is going to ripple from the household effect. So if it starts here, if the lightning strikes in my house, the fire is going to be seen from outside.
It's, have you, in your coaching experience, have you had any wow moments like, oh man, I tried to help this guy, broke through? And
yeah, I mean, just seeing the confidence build in men, and just seeing the confidence build in, anyone that I've worked with, and seeing them 6 months later, seeing the influence of that coaching 6 months later, they're miles, they're years away from where they were in terms of growth. You can sit there and harken back to the day of your history, and you can always dwell on that. And that to me that kills me to see that. But to see somebody, and I have seen this and I have done this, to see somebody flip it around, to help them flip that around and see them 6 months later, it's awesome. One of the things that coaching gives is, restorative. It's restorative to both the coachee and the coach. If you and I are having, coaching conversation, the intent is you should feel better when you leave it. You should be kind of geared up and like, man, yeah, I'm going to go tear it up. And I'm going to be when you go leave, he's going to go tear it up. Right. So everybody leaves feeling great. And that's, that's just another great aspect of it.
It's interesting. And I'm coaching, I'm like also being a father myself. And in this space right now, I listen to a lot of people and I didn't realize so much coaching, everything out there, coaching, life coaching, dad coaching, parenting coaching, mom coaching, finance coach. I didn't realize how much is out there until I got into this space.
Right. Well, I think, and again, you can take, one of the interviews I did with Donnie Tuttle. This guy has 8 kids and, he is a sales coach as well. And I asked him the same thing. I asked him similar things. I was, what do you do? Do you have any types of, coaching tips directed towards parenting? He goes, you just kind of take wherever coaching is applied, it's all the same stuff. It's all the same stuff. So, if you want to become more disciplined in finance and whatnot, you're going to get chances are you're going to get most of the same coaching that I'm going to give on fatherhood. You just got to, it's just a different application applied to a different space.
Oh, transition, wrapping up, final thoughts for dads, leaving dads, and where they can connect with you?
You can always connect with me on Facebook. I'm there most of the time. Brandon G. Handley. If you are a father who's looking to connect with other like-minded fathers, who's looking to either share the struggles, help other men out. And one of the things I always say is like, if you want to go help others celebrate fatherhood, stop on in, man. Because the worst thing in the world is like and it's okay to beat your chest, right? Like the worst thing is, man, I just did this. This is awesome. Everybody's like, man, wah, wah, a wet blanket. That's not what the group is for. The group is there to celebrate with you, and help you, just enjoy those milestones and not come down on you for being excited, to have achieved something. So, stop by there for, in Fatherhood for the Rest of Us is a private Facebook group. And then, the podcast, Fatherhood for the Rest of Us. Check that out. It's going to have, many awesome interviews on there. And every once in a while I throw up some solos, just, what's happening.
Well, Brandon, thank you very much for being on the podcast today. I really do appreciate it. All the links will be in the show notes, and I thank you.
Absolutely, man. And thank you for doing what you're doing out there. I know you're helping fathers grow and get through this fatherhood thing as well. So the work that you're doing is amazing.
Thank you. Well, that's all I have for this episode. I want to thank Brandon Handley from the Father for the Rest of Us being a guest on the podcast. You can find more about Brandon in this podcast over at fathersfortherestofus.com. You can find all the links in the show notes over at sittingonthesideline.com/55. If you have a second, please comment on the podcast. Continue the conversation about fatherhood. And what is your experience of being a parent or a mom or dad? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who, if you're a mom or a dad. Continue the conversation. Leave a comment in the show notes. Or head over to Apple Podcasts, leave a review. You can find all my contact information over at nosittingonthesideline.com/contact. Hey, feel free to sign up for the newsletter. And let you know, keep me updated what's going on with the podcast. Final thoughts, I guess. I'm like, sometimes I do these things and I kind of like it. There were two things that Brandon said that stick with me in the interview. One, when you are going through tough times, like life-changing events like divorce or losing a job and stress for everyday life. One quote he said was, reaching out for help is one of the strongest things you can do. It's true. I mean, I went through divorce myself recently, and it was a tough ride for me, and before my marriage, and I would never believe in reaching out for help, but I reached out for counseling, other men to talk to, support groups, because you know what? You can't do it by yourself, and you're not weak for reaching out for help. So if you're going through a tough time, reach out for help. The other one was, we are influencing our own house. It's true. I mean, if we're negative, you're going to bring a negative influence. If we're positive, you're going to bring a positive influence. I guess the positive part about it would be you bring a lot of better relationships in your family, strengthen relationships in your family, and makes life a lot better. Well, until next time, take care. God bless. See ya.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. Please subscribe to the newsletter to receive updates of the show and helpful and useful tips. This has been a production of Foley 42 Media.